Sometimes I wonder if we understand Islam as it should be understood.
Sometimes it's hard to strengthen our faith amidst all these distractions.
Sometimes we're confused about what we want and what our next steps should be.
Sometimes you need to take a moment and reflect on what matters most.
And because we live in such uncertain times with so much going on around us, I guess sometimes we just gotta sit down and talk about it. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So living in a society that permits and sometimes promotes things that are in contrast to what is permitted by the religion of Islam and prohibited by the religion of Islam, sometimes it becomes difficult for Muslim youth to navigate through such a society. And we see Muslim youth indulging in social evils and social vices. So as Muslim youth, what are some of the reasons that we can speak about that? Why is it that Muslim youth go towards this road? Why is it that they begin to indulge in social evils and social vices?
Well, I think that the first reason is, one of the major reasons is that they're simply growing up here, right? Growing up in a school where you have friends and you have teachers and you have the parents of friends that are influencing them and teaching them that such and such a thing is expected from them, right? So they're expected to grow up and to adopt certain things. Alcohol, drugs, etc. is an expected norm nowadays. So simply growing up around these things sparks this curiosity in children's minds that, you know what, if so-and-so and such a person is doing something, what could that be? Why do they do it? Etc. Lots of questions go through a youth's mind or a child's mind in an attempt to understand these things. And that's where that initial trigger is. They want to understand this. And that's where I think that initial spark guides them and then takes them into one direction or another with regards to starting that initial problem that can...
So some of it could be just curiosity about what a certain thing is.
Exactly.
And even peer pressure. I mean, growing up just in school, you're in school 7 hours a day.
At least.
Yeah, at least. And you can grow up in an Islamic environment at home, but you're almost the whole day you're away from family and the house. So peer pressure is definitely one thing because like as a Muslim, the Muslim identity is so rich and there's a lot of expectations of us of what to uphold and how to serve Allah and the religion, that the world that we're put in, it's very difficult. And so it is, I believe that Muslim youth have a lot of difficulties because there's just been so much thrown at us, whether it's just the explicit content seen on social media, just the conversations people have at school. It boggles one's mind that, you know, that this is going on even in the school age. So we have to, I believe, like teach our kids the resiliency to sort of combat what's going on in school, and not just in school, like in clubs, outside of like social clubs, activities outside of even school, just navigating through this world.
It's a clash of cultures. You know, we see the Canadian culture and the Islamic culture. You know, and it's really hard to, just the word cope comes back into it, like it's really hard to understand, you know, like where does that fine line come into place, right? And see, the Canadian culture now is that it's not just about partying and, you know, being with a certain environment. It's about going past that line, past that boundary, you know, and it's, you come to a point is when do you know you have to not cross that bridge? Once that bridge is crossed, it's really hard to come back, you know, and then the understanding of drugs and alcohol comes into place. It's because when you get a taste of it, it's very hard to turn around. You know, and we have very fine guidelines as well, but it comes back to Nizam of Jama'at and understanding, you know what, where do Jama'at members or office bearers take their step forward and go like, you know what, we see this individual following or going into a different path or a wrong path. When do we step in and go like, you know what, we need to take action now? And there's a fine line for that as well. The stepping in doesn't necessarily have to be with that certain individual. It can be with the group of friends, you know, and if the office bearer is seeing the group of friends and seeing their strengths and weaknesses, he can pinpoint what individual is stronger in one aspect, you know, and just use that for the advantage, right? And it may not be, you know, going directly to that individual and going like, you're making a mistake,
Right.
because obviously that's going to push them away.
Right.
You know, and I've seen that happen many times. You go to an individual, go like, you know what, don't make this action, and they'll do the exact opposite of what you told them to do, right? And I guess in that aspect, always reach out to their friends first. You know, you'll notice that, you know what, their friends will probably appreciate it more, you know, if you reach out to them, because they'll understand the friend a bit more as well. You know, and it may be backlash, but at the same time, it'll also help the environment, you know, become better for that individual as well.
Just bouncing off the word friend, I think just to backtrack a little bit on the concept of friendship, I think that a child's first friends are their parents or their siblings, right? And the parents need to establish that relationship from the beginning, right? So if a parent needs to be able to look at that child, and the child needs to look at their parent like as if they can share anything with that, with those individuals. They can share anything with each other, right? And relationships like these should take precedence over what their friends are trying to influence them about, right? And parents need to be able to spend time with their children. They need to spend quality time in different places with their children, go on trips with their children, so that they can have time to speak to them, right? Speaking to a child and asking them about certain things, it can be difficult. However, the thing is that children also want to share things back with their parents, right? Things that happen in school. Well, I remember when I was little, there was a show and tell, or there was an activity or a group that I was participating in. I always wanted my parents to be there with me, to see me succeed, to see me participating in these things. And sometimes when parents are not there, children get a negative impression of their parents, that their parents may not be interested. So starting first, I think that a parent needs to step in from the beginning and not look at it as if it's a concern after, right? So when you see these negative signs, it's kind of bothersome that this should have been there from the beginning as a positive thing rather than a response to a negative thing, right? So that's what I think that it needs to start with.
That's something I think that might be difficult. There is a communication disconnect between youth and their parents. Sometimes even parents are shy to approach their youth. It's not only the youth who are shy to go to their parents and speak to them about a certain issue. What are some practical methods? I mean, nowadays there's texting and there's email systems that can make it easier to express something. You know, sometimes we might be shy to verbally say something because, you know, approaching somebody and talking to them, you know, look into their eyes and say something, like we're just really embarrassed by it. But I think we can use, and I mean, I don't encourage using texting and these kinds of things to always communicate with relationships that are like family and spouse and stuff. But there are some advantages to it. Like if there's something that you literally can't say, you know, you could write a text message to your dad or your mom and, you know, tell them, you know, this is what I'm going through. Like I can't say it, but like I just want to write it down for you. And, you know, this could be a way to open the doors to that. Because sometimes, you know, like if somebody is at a point right now, let's say, for example, that they have no communication between the parents and the children about sensitive types of issues. And to open that door is really tricky. It's really difficult. So this is, I think, one way that, you know, parents can reach out to youth and youth can reach out to parents as well.
I've noticed that human beings, when us as individuals become parents, we end up taking these roles. A father or a man, when he becomes a father, he ends up taking a more teaching role in how he raises his children, and a mother takes on a more nurturing role on how she raises her kids. And so, taking both the nature and the nurture aspects, if we look at it, like from a father's angle, fathers just need to be there for their kids. You mentioned they just spend time with them. Presence is key, and we've noticed, or just from my own observations, you guys can chime in, but a lot of troubled youth are going through troubles, or they're troubled because in their time, or the time that they needed their father, they weren't there. They were either they were working the graveyard shifts, then kids went to school, they couldn't see them, never had breakfast, missed dinner, right? So the time is important. And so I feel like we're talking about troubled youth, but if we want to start at the root, is that parents should just spend time, and then in terms of, you said like a plan of action. I've noticed that in my own sort of counseling experience, parents that just show empathy, just show that you're an active listener. Don't talk over your child. If he is speaking to you about something that's hurting him or her, and you're giving ideas or you're giving suggestions, they don't want that. They just want to release everything that's in their heart, express themselves. And so, like, key life skills, social communication skills, just like active listening, empathy, safe space. That's a concept that we're starting to talk now, that we should sort of implement that in our own families, is giving space to your children. If they don't want to talk, maybe they're going through some things they can't express yet, but just be there for them. So these sort of social communication skills are very key, critical, and I feel like the younger parents now are more taking it up. But just if you want to sort of start at the root, is just parents just developing those skills and communicating with their children.
It's like I'm noticing that a lot of the reasons that this is happening is because we're so ingrained with the material life. We're so, we're after having a nice house and amazing cars and whatnot. And because of this, you're not just seeing fathers working, but you're seeing the mothers also working as well. And this causes a huge concern for the family, because what's happening now is that nurture's not in the house anymore. That love and kindness, when that kid comes home, they're home alone for another 3-4 hours before anyone's aware that, that they come home. And what this is causing is that they're causing that the vain desires, that's when they start coming into place, right? They start thinking, I have free time, what do I do in this time? And that's when they start looking towards these things, with vain desires coming when you have a waste of time. And when that time is wasted, you go into a worse and worse environment. And this is basically happening over and over again because of materialistic desires. And there's also another book written by Khalifa Rabi, Islam's Response to Contemporary Issues, and it's all about these huge aspects of why this is happening, and it always goes back to materialistic desires. So if we can remind people of living a simpler life, understanding that these things aren't as important as your children and their futures. Remind everyone about what our actual purpose is for our children as well, and for our families, and for like the communities around us as well.
I think there's a saying that prevention is the best cure, right? So I mean, preventing these things before they begin is always the easiest way to avoid these challenges. But let's say if somebody is already indulging in social vices, grew up Muslim, maybe in like a very Islamic household as well, but still they got involved in certain things, social vices, social evils. What can be done? I mean, sometimes we see youth that they're just so far in that they become helpless themselves. Their parents are helpless. They say whatever we try, whatever we do, nothing works. So what can we as youth say? I mean, like if somebody is struggling with some sort of addiction to drugs or alcohol or whatever it may be.
So it's great you brought it up. From a perspective of an individual who has never indulged in such social vices, it's hard to understand. But if we be a better friend, and what that means is that if you sacrifice your own time for this individual, it shows, number one, you care, and you spend time with that individual, and you just try to get him away or get his thoughts away from whatever that individual is. Because an individual who's struggling with an addiction, he is greater than his addiction. So he's an individual first. So he has hobbies, he has interests, he has goals in life, he's inspiring, he's doing something that he wants to do something, or he or she wants to do something. So spend your time with that individual talking about those things. What makes him human? Just having humane conversations. You don't have to bring it up at first. Develop that rapport, making sure that that friendship has trust, that whatever conversations you have stays in between you, and just making sure that you're there for them and they know that you're there for you. If you have to remind them through calls, conversations, text messages, right? Even if you feel that you're not getting a reciprocal communication, that's totally fine. You do your part, that you get your message out and that you tell them. And then hopefully you pray on it as well. As friends, we have to pray for each other that they come around. And so that was my advice, and it's worked on a few. And alhamdulillah, they've come back, they've gone through some paths, and they've told me, they've apologized. They said, we know we were ghosting on you. We know we blocked you on social media. but we apologize. And so, alhamdulillah, it takes time, and we shouldn't give up on our brothers because we're all one family.
One thing I've noticed as well is that a lot of times they've gone into this whirlpool of drugs and alcohol because of their family environment. You know, sometimes there may be trouble within the parents, and you know, you may not know about it, or they're fighting amongst their siblings, and it's always going to start from home. You know, even if there's a friend is there to support them, if the trouble is at home, that friend support can only go so far. And I've noticed that parents need to give that love and affection, no matter what. Like as soon as a parent starts to become more strict, that why are you doing this? Why are you going down this path? The child's he's gonna go like, you know what? I'm just gonna yell at more and more, and they're gonna turn towards those things as well.
That's very interesting. Sorry to cut you off, but level of strictness is something that we definitely need to discuss, right? Yeah. Like, what level of strictness should parents actually adopt? We just want freedom, right? But
so it comes to a point where freedom comes with certain ages as well.
Right.
Like you'll notice that like nowadays you're getting a phone when you're 14 years old or 13 years old. And when I was in high school, you got a phone when you graduated high school. You were getting a phone in college or something. Right. So like with technology, with all these things, you're seeing that strictness is actually like it's regressing. And basically, what's happening is that parents they let you go out whenever you want, but as long as you're coming home at a certain time, and that as you get older, it's just to go low and low. But then what happens is when a kid hits the age of 18, parents start getting more strict because they start realizing now he's going down a bad path. And instead of getting strict at that point, you need to start showing mercy. Right. You know, when that concept of mercy starts to, like that mercy and love comes into place, which is the concept of understanding a child's, you know, like mentality at that point in time. And strictness, once again, like it's different for each individual. I mean, for girls and guys, it's going to be very different. But in the household, there always has to be a sense of mercy and love and affection, which is kind of like it's disappearing now as we get older and technology comes into place. And
So speaking on that, on mercy, I was actually watching a TV show just to sort of indulge in my nostalgia. I was watching Smart Guy, and the third episode, you remember? So the third episode was when TJ, he was 12 and he's in high school and he goes to a party and he gets caught drinking. And so his dad comes into his room and he's like, you know, the first thing, he starts pointing on he's grounded for life. He can't go into any parties. And so he started meting out the punishment first. And so when we're talking about strictness, we should come to the fact that whatever the punishment is or whatever punishment you believe should be appropriate based on the actions. It shouldn't be more. And even Allah says that His mercy is greater than all things. And so even as parents, our mercy should come before our sort of strictness or harshness. And that's what reforms our children. And that's what our children then become more accepting. And so I feel like I had to bring that up because after the father sort of brought this punishment and told TJ that you're grounded for life, he went and then he spoke to his older daughter and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then the older daughter said that, did you read the brochures on parenting? And he said no. It was a brochure on parenting and drinking substance use, and he didn't read it. And so the lesson learned is that parents should be educated first on if they don't know what to do, then find ways in which you can know what's the best practice.
Just like how we're saying that youth need to reach out for help, sometimes parents need to reach out for help as well. You know, because you're speaking about, you know, like a set plan. There's actually a book written by Ahmadi-Muslim anhu. It was actually a lecture printed as Minhaj al-Talibin, Way of the Seekers, in which, for example, like you said that, you know, scolding a child, Ahmadi-Muslim anhu writes that never scold a child in public. You know, always take them aside because this will have a very detrimental impact on them. Right, so there's so many things, there's so much Jama'at literature, Khulafa have given us so much information, Hazrat Masih Maud that we can use in our daily lives. And most of all, praying for, you know, the youth as well. You know, like as you were saying before, that we need to pray for our brothers because they're the ones who are struggling. What can we sort of say? I'm sorry, you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to add that speaking about this, speaking about what both of you alluded to, I think that there are two kinds of reinforcements, right? There's a positive reinforcement and there's a negative reinforcement. So the scolding part was taken care of by the negative, and especially doing it in public. That's extremely negative. But rewarding your children,
good behavior,
showing them that, look, I know that you did something wrong, but let's set goals, right? You gotta set goals with your children. Like in my instance, when I wasn't doing very well in school, at a certain age, my parents set goals for me. And after I got those and I achieved those goals, they treated me. You know, they bought me, you know, some gifts as a result of that reward, right?
Took them to Dairy Queen for ice
cream.
cream.
Exactly. Yeah, something a little bit bigger than that. But that made me feel like I wanted to do more after that, right? And it gives you that gratitude inside your mind that, you know what, my parents actually, they care about me and they want me to succeed rather than they just want to impose rules on me. And when children feel like their parents want to impose rules on them, they want to rebel. It's a natural instinct. You want to break rules. But when you give them a reward for it, you kind of understand that this person is doing this because they want me to succeed and they want me to be successful. That positive reinforcement is very, very important in a mixture of a different kind of reinforcement, right? To show that you're a little bit disappointed in your child. You know, you never want them to feel that you're angry at them. You want them to feel that disappointment, right? And that's where when a person gets that feeling that this person cares about me rather than this person is just here to make me do stuff.
You know, it's
right?
so interesting you say that. That's actually what the essence of taqwa is.
Right.
You know, like the word taqwa is sometimes translated as fear of God, but it's also, you know, the fear of doing something that will make Allah Ta'ala disappointed in what, right? So, I mean, that's what the actual essence, and that's what parents need to understand as well.
On top of that, on setting goals and just the reward, it's the fact that you also want to teach them that there's a future. You know, that we hope that they're the future of your family, right? And that they're going to lead your family, right? And that we have a mutual goal, the parent and the children. And then once you give them that and you give them that reward after that, in an attempt to teach them that they're going to be something one day, and that's when children get inspired as well, right? On top of that reward. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's great you brought up future because I think that's a nice segue of now speaking about, like, when we're trying to talk to our troubled brothers, is that give them hope and give them a reason that they feel valued. You know, our Jama'at is so great that it's youth-led, that everything that we do, we say Khudam al-Ahmadiyya is the backbone of Jama'at. That whatever service is needed, that we're all on call. That we say in our Khudam pledge that we will sacrifice our life, wealth, time and honor for the sake of our faith, country and nation. It's a huge pledge and we all recite it. And so we all make this pledge, and the fact that if we gear our brothers to this and say that this Jama'at is what gives us respect or value, that without Jama'at we are nothing. And so this world is like 7 billion people, but this Jama'at is small relatively, but we do immensely great things. We build hospitals, we make orphanages in Africa, we build model villages, we do MTA work, we do youth leagues and basketball tournaments, and we even make like food for like in the kitchen during Langar Khana. So like, and especially because women are the one who make the food, but at Jalsa it's the men who put in the work, right? And so giving them an avenue of sort of, you're coming from a bad place, but there is hope. There is where you can come. There's safe space. Jama'at is a safe space. We know this because we've been here and we welcome them. There's like, you tell me, we never sort of tell anyone, no, you can't come. Like, you are not allowed. Everybody is allowed. And so giving them the space and where their faculties, their skill set, they can use. There is no skill set that someone has that they cannot use in this Jama'at. We need people who have like any type of skill we need. Right. And so people have this, even our troubled youth, like they feel like they may not have anything to give, but they do. They have their time. And the fact that they're capable bodies, that they can communicate, they can drive a car is one big thing. Yeah. Like, we need people to pick me up for namaz. I don't have a car, and I'm trying to read namaz, so come pick me up. So simple things like that, like our brothers, they overthink. It's an oversight for them. And so just putting things in perspective, I believe, and it's worked for me, and it's just tips for you guys, is that just giving them hope.
some of the great points that Shakil, you just shared right now, that although we're living in a society that permits and promotes these social vices and evils, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to partake in any of those kinds of things. Jama'at is, as you said, a safe space. That's how youth need to see Jama'at Ahmadiyya. That, you know, this is where we're going to go to be safeguarded from all of these things that are happening around us. And the more we involve ourselves into these kinds of things, and the more we keep our company pure, right? Like you said, that we need to be with brothers who pray for us, right? And who give us good advice. So the more we can do that, then the better the outcome will be. And also parents, great points were shared, I think, for the parents as well to sort of ponder over. And hopefully they can get it from the youth perspective, you know, that if they are going through some struggles and, you know, challenges, then how can they overcome those? So Jazakallah for coming today, guys, and very fruitful discussion. Jazakallah for all the points you brought up. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
नौनिहालाने जमात मुझे कुछ कहना है पर है ये शर्त के ज़ाए मेरा पैगाम